Hey guys, John C. Hickmet here. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to go over 7 signs to help you establish whether the chronic symptoms you have may be what's known as TMS, neuroplastic pain, or mind-body pain, and what to do about it. Maybe you've been told at some point that bearing emotions could be contributing to your symptoms, and maybe that sounded strange to you, or maybe you thought that can't be me because I don't feel like I'm repressing any emotions. If that sounds familiar to you, this video is for you because I'm going to walk you through 7 signs that can help you establish whether that may actually be true for you or not. So TMS stands for tension myositis syndrome. It's a term that was coined by Dr. John Sarno, and these days people often use the term neuroplastic symptoms, but they're essentially pointing towards the same thing. They describe real symptoms created through patterns in the brain, nervous system, and unresolved emotional tension, not imagined symptoms or made up symptoms, but very real symptoms being maintained through the mind-body processes. When I say chronic symptoms, I mean any symptoms lasting longer than a couple of months, whether that's back pain, pelvic pain, migraines, IBS, fibromyalgia, or things like anxiety, fatigue, insomnia. Really, any chronic disharmony in the mind or body can fall under this umbrella because TMS is describing a dysregulated nervous system, creating symptoms that keep repeating over and over again. And if this is what you have, mainstream approaches aimed purely at fixing the body often do not fully resolve it because they may be missing the deeper mechanism that is keeping symptoms going. And if even some of the signs I'm going to speak about resonate with you, it may mean the solution for you is not continuing to endlessly search through doctors, treatments, and physical fixes alone. It may mean what you need is something called the mind-body approach, which I'll talk more about at the end, and which teaches you how to become more emotionally available instead of continuing to bury what has been pushed down. This mind-body approach is the approach I use to heal my chronic stomach pain and back pain, and it's the approach many others have used to heal symptoms too. And I'll just say this as well. When I first heard emotions might be contributing to my symptoms, I didn't believe it. I thought I'm calm, I'm aware, I'm not bearing anything. But once I started the mind-body process, I realized very quickly how much was happening beneath the surface that I simply wasn't conscious of yet. And that may be true for you as well. So let's get started with the signs. Sign number 1 is that you've tried lots of treatments and nothing has fully resolved it. That's sign number 1. You've tried lots of treatments and nothing has resolved it. And maybe you're at the point where you feel like you've tried almost everything and you still don't have lasting relief. You've tried doctors, specialists, physios, medications, supplements, maybe scans, surgeries, and perhaps even alternative things like acupuncture and nutritionists. Maybe you've tried meditation and journaling. Maybe some things helped you for a little while, but symptoms came back, or they changed form, or they never fully went away, and you're left wondering why nothing seems to hold. I actually see this as a big clue that there may be a neuroplastic component, because if endless attempts to fix your body has not resolved it, the root mechanism may not be purely physical. And I want to say something important here, because even if you've already tried some mind-body tools and they haven't worked yet, that doesn't mean you've exhausted this mind-body approach that I'm going to speak about. It may mean that you need a different modality, more support, more community, deeper one-to-one work, or simply a different understanding of what the process is actually asking of you. So if you've tried lots of things and you're still stuck, I actually want you to consider that as a reason to become more curious about this approach, not less curious. That's sign number 1. You've tried lots of things, nothing's worked. Sign number 2 is certain personality traits tend to go along with someone that has TMS. This is something John Sarno talked about a lot and something many mind-body practitioners have continued to observe. Things like perfectionism, people-pleasing, being highly controlling, hyper-responsible, always trying to do the right thing, always trying to hold things together, have control for everyone else. These patterns often go hand in hand with emotional repression. Because when we are busy managing everything externally, we often get disconnected from what is happening internally. And let me be really clear with this. It's not emotions that are creating symptoms in the body. It's the bearing of emotions that creates the tension that can contribute that can create symptoms in the first place. So fear does not cause pain, anger does not cause pain, grief does not cause pain, but not knowing how to safely feel these states can absolutely keep the nervous system in protection. And most of us were taught this from a very early age, that some emotions are acceptable and others should be pushed away. And we become very practiced at functioning while quietly suppressing what we feel. So if you recognize yourself in the personality patterns that I mentioned, I'd pay attention, because that can be a real clue that this framework may be relevant to you, having controlling personality traits. That's sign number 2. Sign number 3 is your symptoms began during a prolonged stress or a difficult life period. And this is something I hear all the time when people reflect back on when symptoms first started. They say, it began during a burnout period, during a difficult relationship, during COVID, during grief, during work stress, or while trying to hold too much together for too long. And what I want to be careful to say here is that stress itself does not simply cause the symptoms. It is often the emotions born out of stress that were never fully, properly felt or processed in that stressful period. Sometimes people can point to a period when symptoms began, and sometimes it's much less obvious, but even if something not overtly stressful is happening, there can still be an emotional load. So moving house, becoming a parent, changing jobs, moving countries, these things can all stir emotions internally. And they may not be emotionally traumatic. And for some people, symptoms didn't start in one dramatic moment at all, but they showed up across their whole life, which can still fit into this framework. So often what we are looking for is not a perfect story about what caused the symptoms, but simply whether there is a correlation between life pressure, emotional burden, and when symptoms began to appear. And if you can see that connection in your own life, that may be a clue that there is more going on than is something purely structural. Sign number 4. Scans or structural explanations do not fully explain your symptoms. This, number 4, is obviously a lot of people go to the doctors and they go and get scans, and it doesn't explain the symptoms that they have. It's the first thing that people go and do in the mainstream. They're trying to look for some sort of sign where they have something wrong. Maybe you've had lots of tests and they come back normal, and doctors tell you they can't find anything wrong, which can feel frustrating. But that itself can sometimes be a clue. Or perhaps they have found something, a disc issue, inflammation, scoliosis, gut imbalance, something on a scan, but that finding does not really explain the intensity or persistence of what you're experiencing. I often say to people that structural findings and symptoms are not always the same thing, because many people have abnormalities and no pain, and many people have chronic pain with no clear abnormalities. That was true for me when I had back pain, because I still have scoliosis and I don't have chronic back pain anymore. And that alone forced me to question whether structure was really driving my symptoms. This was a huge part of what John Sarno observed too, that people were recovering even while structural abnormalities remained, because the structure was not the true driver of the pain. So whether your tests are clear or whether they show something that does not fully add up, either way, it may be worth becoming curious about whether symptoms are being maintained in another way, in a neuroplastic nervous system way. Sign number 5. Symptoms improve when you feel safe, absorbed, or distracted. This is something many people dismiss, even though it can be a very meaningful clue. Maybe your symptoms reduce when you're on holiday, or while you're laughing with your friends, or when you're immersed in work, doing something creative, exercising, traveling, or simply focused on something else. And people sometimes think this means the symptoms are imaginary, but that is not what it means at all. It simply means the nervous system is capable of shifting under different conditions. And if symptoms can shift, even temporarily, that tells us something important, because it suggests the system is not fixed and rigid. It suggests there is movement available. Now, for some people, this is very obvious, and for others, they say, no, my symptoms can feel constant. They're here all the time. I don't notice this at all, and that's okay. It does not rule this approach out. But if you have noticed that symptoms soften when you feel safer, calmer, more connected, or more absorbed, I would not ignore that, because it can be a meaningful sign, because those moments can show us that the system can regulate. And if it can regulate, it can often heal using this mind-body approach. That's number 5. Sign number 6 is your symptoms are inconsistent or move around. Honestly, this is one of the classic things people notice that makes them start questioning a purely structural explanation. Pain changes, location, symptoms come and go. One symptom fades and another appears, or an activity hurts one day and seems completely fine another day. Maybe you have IBS for a while and then migraines show up, or back pain settles and pelvic symptoms begin, or fatigue comes in waves that do not make much sense. This kind of variability can be a clue because symptoms driven through neuroplastic patterns often behave in ways that are a bit inconsistent, unpredictable, and sometimes almost illogical. And when people start noticing that symptoms move around or behave differently under the same circumstances, they often begin to realize something does not add up with a simple damage model. And I hear this from people all the time. They say sometimes the trigger causes symptoms and sometimes it doesn't. And that alone can be worth paying attention to. That's sign number 6. Last sign. Sign number 7. Sign number 7 of the fact that this could be TMS or neuroplastic symptoms is that you have a history of trauma, neglect, or adverse experiences in your life. If you grew up in a home where there were lots of what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, you are more likely to carry dysregulation throughout your life. That may be showing up for you right now as chronic symptoms, but early in life, it may have shown up in other ways. Maybe addictive tendencies, repeated difficult relationships, or feeling chronically stuck in patterns that are repeating themselves. Because a dysregulated nervous system does not only show up as symptoms in the body, it can also show up as chronic situations in life. Things that keep repeating because something unresolved is still being carried. And often the root of that is what happened when we were children. We did not have our emotional needs properly met, whether through abuse, neglect, instability, bullying, divorce, a parent who was unavailable in some way. And when those things happen, emotions often get pushed down because as children, we simply do not have the capacity to process what is happening. And that unresolved material can later surface as chronic symptoms. That is one reason this can be a sign of TMS, but I want to be clear, this does not mean blaming your family or living as a victim, because that's often where people's minds go when they first hear adverse experiences could be creating symptoms. You can love your family and acknowledge hurt. You can have compassion and still process anger to them. And those things do not have to contradict each other. In fact, they belong together in healing, the contradiction. And even if you have already done therapy around some of this, but the patterns are still repeating, that may simply mean you need support from someone who understands how these experiences affect the nervous system. I want to say something else important. Even if you did not have obvious trauma, you can still have chronic symptoms, because I thought I had a very loving childhood and I still had terrible stomach pain and back pain for a long time. What I later realized is that there can be subtle forms of emotional neglect as well, where emotions got swept under the rug, there wasn't practical support for emotions, and it was happening more than I recognized. So parents can care deeply and still not know how to support us through emotions because they were never taught to do so themselves. And honestly, everyone learns how to repress emotions to a certain degree. So you do not need to have a dramatic trauma history for this to be relevant to you, because even ordinary emotional repression learned in everyday family life can contribute to chronic symptoms. So those are the 7 signs. If some of these signs resonate, there is a good chance the mind-body approach is worth exploring for you. And I want to emphasize that this is a non-invasive approach, that many people have simply never tried this mind-body approach before. It's not surgery, it's not more pills, it's not forcing changes in the body, it's learning how to relate differently to the mind, the body, emotions, the nervous system, and that alone can be completely a new path for some people. And honestly, if you've tried many things but you've never explored the mind-body approach, that may even be a sign that this in itself deserves your attention, because there may be a path that you haven't looked at yet. In the early stages, that often is going to mean learning about the model, reading the books, watching the videos, understanding how symptoms can be generated and how healing can begin, and just allowing this framework to start making sense. So there are lots more videos on my channel where I go much deeper into how the mind-body approach works. So I'd really encourage you to keep going and watch those next if this has resonated. And also below in the caption, I've linked my pain relief community where you can start with a free lecture series explaining this work in more depth. There's also a quiz to help you understand where your health is right now. If you want more support from me beyond that, there are therapy and community options in the caption as well, and you can learn more about all of that in the description and choose what feels supportive for you. If this video resonated, let me know in the comments, share what stood out for you, ask me any questions, and I generally love to hear what landed for you, what you need more help with. That's it. Those are the 7 signs. I said I'd go into the mind-body approach a bit here, but I can see that I've gone on for a bit longer, so I'll just keep this video at the 7 signs. Like I said before, if only a couple of those signs stood out for you, it's still a good reason to utilize the mind-body approach, because if you've never tried it before, I really recommend giving it a go. It's what got me through 10 years of chronic stomach and back pain, and now I've helped many other people get through their symptoms, not just back pain and stomach pain, migraines, fatigue, anxiety, depression, dizziness, insomnia, pelvic pain. That's it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Find the videos where I explain the mind-body approach a bit more. I use the term allowing to describe the approach, so you can click on videos that say allowing. But if you have any questions or would like any direction, ask in the comments below, or like I said before in the caption, you can also join our community for free and get a full lecture series about why symptoms are created, the tools you need to get better, and how to incorporate those tools into your life. So thanks for watching. Hopefully hear from you soon.